Japan, the birthplace of Jujutsu. Even when limited to the late Edo period alone, it is said that there were as many as 179 different schools of Jujutsu. Softness overcomes strength. The man who spread that philosophy to the world and reconstructed it into a modern martial art was Jigoro Kano. Often called the father of modern Japanese martial arts, the classical Jujutsu school he studied in his youth, and which became the foundation of his Judo, was Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū. By the late Edo period, this school had grown into one of the major schools of Jujutsu, said to have systematized atemi, striking techniques, kappo, resuscitation methods, and joint locking techniques. Yet it was not merely an old style of Jujutsu. Within it existed concepts such as kuzushi, breaking balance, rie, underlying martial logic, and the philosophy of kasatsu jizai, the ability to both kill and revive at will, ideas that would later be inherited by Judo itself. Among the many classical schools of Jujutsu, what kind of tradition was Tenjin Shinyo-Ryu, a school whose influence on later generations proved especially profound? And why did Kano Jigoro show such extraordinary interest in karate? This time, using the 1893 publication Tenjin Shinyo-Ryu Jujutsu Gokui Kyōju Zukai as the primary reference material, we will examine its history and philosophy in order to uncover its true nature. To begin with, the origins of Jujutsu itself can be traced back, in legend, to the age of the gods. It is said that even in the era when the deities of Kashima and Katori subdued the eastern tribes, there already existed the concept of techniques for restraining an opponent, the fundamental meaning of Jujutsu. The deities enshrined at Kashima Jingu and Katori Jingu, known respectively as Kashima Daimyojin and Katori Daimyojin, have long been revered as the two great guardian deities of Japanese martial arts. In traditional dojo with ancient lineages, it is not uncommon to see a kamidana, Shinto altar, placed high at the front of the hall, beneath which hang scrolls inscribed with Kashima Daimyojin and Katori Daimyojin. This is done to honor the two gods as protectors of the martial arts and to pray for their divine protection. However, from the age of the gods through the era of the Hojo regents, there was apparently no independent martial tradition that formally bore the name Jujutsu. According to Tenjin Shinyo-Ryu, Jujutsu Gokui Kyōju Zukai, after the age of the gods came periods of warfare, during which techniques and forms were gathered from actual grappling combat, methods by which weaker men could more easily overpower stronger opponents and achieve victory. These became the foundation of the art. Over time, various masters added their own innovations and refinements, eventually giving rise to the many schools of Jujutsu. The text further points out that, considering that even the names of schools were not yet fixed in ancient times, the founding of martial traditions, not only Jujutsu, but all martial arts schools, likely developed in much the same way. It also rejects the theory that the Chinese émigré Chen Yuanbin was the true founder of Jujutsu, taking essentially the same position as that held by the modern Japanese martial arts community today, that the claim is mistaken. Tenjin Shinyo-Ryu Jujutsu itself was originally formed through the union of two traditions, Yōshin-ryū and Shin no Shinto-ryū. To understand its origins, it is therefore first necessary to explain the histories of these two schools. The founder of Yōshin-ryū was said to be a pediatric physician from Nagasaki named Akiyama Shirobe Yoshitoki. Yoshitoki traveled to China in pursuit of scholarly study, and while there he learned forms of martial techniques. However, the martial arts practiced in China at the time were said to focus mainly on kicking and striking, making them quite different from what was then considered Japanese Jujutsu. Even so, Yoshitoki mastered these techniques and was further entrusted with 18 methods of resuscitation and restorative treatment. After returning to Japan, he began teaching what he had learned. However, because the number of techniques was limited, his students eventually reached a dead end in their training, and the number of practitioners gradually declined. In response, Yoshitoki undertook a 100-day prayer retreat at Dazaifu Tenmangu in Chikuzen. During this period, he devised and organized 303 techniques. At the shrine, he is also said to have gained insight from observing a willow tree standing before the sanctuary. Even during heavy snowfall, the branches did not break or retain the snow, but instead bent flexibly and let it slide away. From this realization, he named his teachings Yōshin-ryū, the School of the Willow Heart. As mentioned earlier, the 18 methods of resuscitation were learned in China. The arts of Sappo and Kappo primarily refer to knowledge of vital points, strikes to those vital points, and methods of revival. Regarding the origins of the Yōshin-ryū methods of killing and revival, the text Yōshin-ryū Sakatsu Nihō states the following. The methods of killing and revival were transmitted in China during the Zhou dynasty by a man named Bian Kui. During the Three Kingdoms period, a retainer of Cao Cao of Wei named Bukan inherited these teachings. Yoshin Senbei Yoshitoki Oe, a resident of Isahaya in Hizen province, delighted in the arts of Kenpo and throwing techniques, mastered their subtleties, and established the techniques of Jujutsu. While traveling in Nagasaki, he received the Doshaku no Maki. A scroll transmitted through Bukan of Wei grasped its profound meaning, authored the 8 scrolls, and founded Yōshin-ryū. This Doshaku no Maki was a scroll containing diagrams of the human body's vital points and explanations of them, and it was regarded as the highest secret transmission of Yōshin-ryū. It was inherited by later branches of Yōshin-ryū and was also passed down into the late Edo period Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū in the form of a scroll called Hito no Maki, Scroll of Man. Furthermore, the vital point knowledge of Yōshin-ryū had a tremendous influence on many schools of Jujutsu. The names of vital points used in modern martial arts, such as Suigetsu, Jinchu, and Murasame, are largely derived from Yōshin-ryū terminology. This is because the terminology of modern martial arts spread to other disciplines through Judo. The philosophy of Kasatsu Jizai, the freedom to kill or give life, holds that one who understands the techniques for destroying the human body must also understand the methods of healing it. It became part of the identity of the nationally licensed medical profession known as Judo therapists, Judo Seifukushi, which is said to have derived from Japanese Jujutsu. Originally, the school had been created through innovations and modifications based on Yōshin-ryū, and therefore many of its techniques shared common features with it. This was the origin of Shinto-ryū. It is said that Yamamoto defeated Takino Yukin of Kito-ryu and destroyed his dojo. In the Kihon Juwashu, it is written, "In the present age, there exists a form of Yawara known as Kito-ryu. Yamamoto Tamazemon was teaching a jujutsu called Yōshin-ryū in Osaka. At that time, a man named Takino Senzaemon Sadataka had also established a training hall, but after competing with Tamazemon and being defeated, his practice hall was crushed. Tenjin Shinyo-Ryu was formed by combining these two schools, and its founder was Mataemon. Mataemon was a retainer of the Kishu domain. His real name was Okayama Hachiaji, and his artistic name was Ryu Kansai. From childhood, he loved martial arts, and at the age of 15 he went to Kyoto, where he entered the school of Master Ichiyanagi Oribe, a retainer of Lord Ichiyanagi, who at the time was renowned as a master of Yōshin-ryū Jujutsu. He trained there for 6 or 7 years, but after his teacher passed away, he then entered the school of Master Honma Jomon, who was a master of Shinto-ryū Jujutsu. He devoted himself to training day and night, exhausting both body and spirit, and after 6 years, he finally mastered the deepest teachings of the school. Afterward, he traveled throughout the provinces and engaged in matches with famous martial artists and teachers of various domains, yet he was never once defeated. Afterward, he spent 2 or 3 years teaching Jujutsu in Kusatsu of Goshu, Omi province. During that time, a man named Nishimura Gekinosuke came to challenge him, hurling insults and demanding a match. They agreed that the loser would become the disciple of the victor. He defeated Nishimura, who then became his student. There is also an anecdote that, on one occasion, in order to save someone, he was forced to fight more than 100 villains. At that time, together with his senior disciple Nishimura Gekinosuke, the two employed the secret techniques they had refined through many years of training, scattering the attackers and rescuing the victim. Up to that point, in traditional grappling arts, striking vital points, atemi, against an opponent, was known among the masters of various schools, but there had not yet existed a school that centered its training specifically around atemi itself. However, he came to realize that in order to truly save lives, one could not achieve genuine victory without training in real atemi applicable to actual life and death combat. Thus, he devoted himself even further to the study and training of atemi, constantly refining and improving his methods with all the strength of his mind and spirit. He continued training for many years until he deeply embodied the principle that softness overcomes hardness, and ultimately mastered the deepest secrets of Jujutsu. Afterward, he united the Yōshin-ryū and Shinto-ryū traditions, established a new school, organized 120 techniques, and named it Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū. He then traveled throughout various provinces to continue his training before eventually going to Edo, where he became a judo instructor. In late Edo period Edo, the 3 great swordsmanship dojo of Edo were the Genbukan of Chiba Shusaku's Hokushin Ito-ryu, the Renpikan of Saito Yakuro's Shinto-munen-ryu, and the Shigakukan of Momoi Shunzo's Kyōshin Meichi-ryu. This stone monument marks the former site of the Genbukan. It is said that Iso Mataemon's Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū Jujutsu Dojo stood diagonally across from this location, and that many students trained in swordsmanship at the Genbukan while studying Jujutsu at the Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū Dojo. Jigoro Kano, the founder of Kodokan Judo, first studied this school, and later went on to study Kito-ryu Jujutsu, transforming Jujutsu into Judo. Kano also worked to incorporate karate, a martial art from the Ryukyu Kingdom, the historical independent kingdom of Okinawa, that was still largely unknown in mainland Japan, into the framework of Japanese martial arts. In front of several hundred of Kano's students, Gichin Funakoshi, often regarded as the father of mainland karate, demonstrated karate kata. However, because karate lacked a training method equivalent to randori, free sparring, the judo side reportedly showed little interest. Even so, Kano himself questioned Funakoshi extensively. A few years later, while visiting Okinawa, Kano requested demonstrations from some of the greatest figures in Okinawan karate, including Chojun Miyagi and Kenwa Mabuni. Deeply impressed by the beauty of their techniques, he encouraged them to spread karate on the Japanese mainland. 7 months after his visit to Okinawa, Kano delivered a lecture at the Tokyo Higher Normal School in which he spoke about a demonstration by the karate master Motobu Choki, who was reputed to be the strongest practical fighter in Okinawa.
When I recently visited Okinawa Prefecture, I saw a man named Motobu break a board that appeared to be 6 or 7 but thick with his fist, and also easily split 2 stacked boards using the side of his palm. Against such techniques, a skull could likely be shattered with a single blow. Considering this, Randori must be conducted as it has been taught since the founding of the Kodokan, remaining apart from the opponent, seizing opportunities to capture and throw them. If one fights in the way commonly seen today, clinging to the opponent and attempting to twist them down, one's arms would immediately be struck and broken, and one's head smashed. Thinking in this way, anyone studying judo as a martial art must devote considerable effort to the practice of atemi.
Motobu's demonstration appears to have left an enormous impression on Kano, and the same publication also included illustrations assuming striking attacks. Incidentally, Kano also seems to have been indirectly involved in the spread of boxing in Japan. From the end of the Edo period onward, Japan saw occasional mixed-style matches between sumo wrestlers and Western sailors who possessed knowledge of boxing. Kenji Kano, Jigoro Kano's nephew, witnessed one such mixed-style bout in Yokohama. He later organized cross-style matches between judoka and boxers as public events, and in 1921 founded Japan's first boxing gym, the Kokusai Juken Club, which was later renamed the Dai Nippon Kentokai, and played a major role in the early development of professional boxing in Japan. In 1918, Kano Jigoro stated that judoka would likely devote serious study to boxing in the future. Evidence of this can be seen 9 years later in 1927, when Kano demonstrated how to approach a boxer, how to fight against one, and provided concrete examples. Kano was also deeply interested in karate, which included kicking techniques absent in boxing. He carefully considered how to deal with karate practitioners by seizing parts of their body during combat and how to break their balance. Carrying on Kano's intentions, a book titled Takeda Asajiro Tai Kenshiki Jisen Teki Judo Shiho, Practical Judo Methods Against Boxing, was published in 1936, exploring from a judo perspective how to counter boxing. Judo was established by removing dangerous techniques such as atemi, striking attacks, from traditional jujutsu, and by reorganizing its training system into one in which anyone could train safely and improve, rather than a system in which only a select handful of powerful practitioners became even stronger. Ironically, however, one cannot help but sense a certain inner conflict within Kano over whether eliminating atemi, striking techniques, from jujutsu was truly appropriate from the standpoint of martial effectiveness. It also seems likely that one major reason why Kano held such deep interest in the Ryukyu Kingdom's Todi Jutsu, later known as karate, was because Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū, the school that formed the foundation of his own martial background, was itself a tradition that placed strong emphasis on atemi, striking techniques. Next, let us examine the philosophy of Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū. The following describes the proper mindset for one entering the school as a disciple. To attain the deepest secrets of martial arts, one must first enter a school and devote many years to disciplined training under a master's guidance. At the same time, one should keep courage within while avoiding arrogance, and continue seeking the wisdom of the masters of the past in order to approach true mastery. This closely overlaps with the image of Kano Jigoro, who introduced revolutionary training methods and even dangerous techniques into jujutsu practice, yet still wrestled until the very end with the question of whether striking techniques should truly be discarded. It further declares that the three greatest obstacles to progress are alcohol, lust, and wealth. If one falls into drunkenness, judgment is lost. If consumed by lust, one's ambition fades. And if obsessed with money, one's integrity is corrupted. Moreover, once a practitioner gains skill, arrogance may arise, causing them to look down on others, which can ultimately lead to disgrace and catastrophic failure. Thus, no matter how technically skilled a martial artist may become, without self-discipline and humility, they can never be considered a true master. The text teaches that a warrior must continually uphold these three prohibitions throughout their training. Next, the text explains the meaning of jujutsu itself as follows. The fundamental meaning of Jujutsu refers to the natural human body completely without weapons or armor, one's naked form as born into the world. First, one must deeply contemplate this meaning and understand human nature and reason. Only after this understanding should one take up weapons and armor. When this is done properly, the inner and outer become united. The mind governs the body governs the weapons, and the weapons must never come to govern the body. Only then can one move freely when facing the battlefield and engaging in grappling combat. When armor is worn, movement, advance, and retreat are naturally restricted. Therefore, one must train according to methods that assume such limitations from the outset. One should regard oneself as a lord, and one's limbs as loyal retainers, harmonizing mind and body completely. Only then, even when equipped with armor, can the body still function freely. For this reason, Jujutsu was considered among the most important disciplines for the warrior class. Yet people of the world fail to understand this principle. Some high-ranking individuals think such training beneath them, while others regard it merely as a skill to be used during drunken disturbances at banquets. The text states that such views are gravely mistaken. Although Jujutsu was practiced without wearing actual armor or weapons, practitioners were taught to train with the awareness of fighting while armored. This reminds us that Jujutsu was truly a martial art of the samurai. By this period, warriors no longer entered battle clad in full armor as they once had, which makes this continued mindset especially fascinating. Next, the text introduces the principle of the weak overcoming the strong. Anyone who trains in judo should never fear an opponent, no matter how physically powerful they may be. Likewise, one must never become arrogant when facing someone weaker. One should always use the techniques one has cultivated to respond to the opponent without directly opposing their strength. For example, if one uses the opponent's power the way a piece of wood floating upon waves moves with the current, then even the strongest enemy can be overcome. Likewise, when a large ship floats upon water, even a single person can maneuver it freely. This is because the ship rests upon water. But if that same ship were placed upon land, a single person would never be able to move it. The principle by which the weak overcome the strong is exactly the same. If one merely contests strength directly, victory cannot be achieved. Therefore, one must skillfully apply technique, at times even presenting deception. And when the opponent falls for that emptiness or feint, techniques should be executed decisively. In other words, the crucial point is to adapt one's technique according to the opponent. Now let's take a look at a demonstration of Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū. One of the defining characteristics of Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū is its highly sophisticated use of atemi waza, striking techniques. Atemi is not simply punching or kicking. It is a method of striking or attacking the body's physiological weak points. Before transitioning into throws, joint locks, or choking techniques, or sometimes simultaneously, the practitioner delivers atemi to exploit the opponent's momentary vulnerability and subdue them instantly. Now let us watch a video that truly embodies these teachings. Kyuzo Mifune was one of the top disciples of Jigoro Kano and a holder of the highest rank in Kodokan Judo, 10th Dan. Although Mifune himself did not come from the Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū tradition, his first teacher, Yokoyama Sakujiro, was from that school, and Kano himself had also studied it. For that reason, it is believed that Mifune inherited many of the technical principles and theories of Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū quite strongly. It is clear from the footage that he was already elderly at the time. As mentioned earlier, Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū was named after the philosophy of being like willow branches that bend and let heavy snow slide off. This movement by Kyuzo Mifune seems to perfectly embody the very essence of Tenjin Shin'yō-ryū. In future videos, we will continue introducing lesser-known Japanese martial arts, so if you are interested, please like and subscribe. Our guidebook, featuring major annual martial arts demonstrations held in and around Tokyo, martial arts equipment shops, and historical martial arts sites that are not found in ordinary travel guidebooks, is now on sale. You can purchase it from the link in the description below. If you are a martial artist planning to visit Tokyo, please be sure to check it out.
Japan B is a channel that randomly shares information about lesser-known aspects of Japanese culture, spanning across various genres.